Hello, everyone. I'm Hemant Gaikwad. I work for Dell EMC. This is my first time I'm presenting at SNE, and I'm very glad to have this opportunity. So today we are going to cover how do you create simulations for your physical device, be it server, storage, and network or networking devices, and how you could create it for a scale environment and have these deployed um, across multiple containers in just a matter of few minutes. Um, we've started this as a stretch assignment, and now it's a full-fledged solution that we have. We call it Xeon internally. So we'll cover few aspects of what we've done in this. In the interest of time, what we'll also try to do is just cover the details about how we've implemented without getting into nitty-gritties of the containers, or for that matter, the solution that we've used. So at the end of it, you should be able to know what we've tried to do in terms of simulating server storage or networking devices, how we use containers to be able to do that, and also how we've been able to scale it to the levels that we've done today. As I said, we call this device simulation solution as Xeon. So we will try to look at why we started investing into this device simulation, what is it, and then how we've implemented, and finally we'll look at the value that Xeon has provided us. I work for the server division at Dell EMC, and one of the foremost um, thing that we would want to do day in day out is to be able to ensure that when customers have Dell hardware within their data centers, the hardware works perfectly fine, which essentially means that they should be able to monitor and manage these devices and manage at scale using not just one-to-one management, but also one-to-many management, where you have a single pane of glass through which you could manage these devices. Um, so what we're trying to do is be able to have a physical device. You might have it in scarce, and you could just have maybe a couple of physical devices. Take those physical devices and be able to actually assemble those devices so that you could reduce on the costs, the efforts that you would want to spend in order to design, develop, and test your products. So we're trying to reduce the hardware dependencies. Let's assume a physical disk itself. A physical disk, one single disk, has 13 different states that it could be in, the health states. And it's really difficult for you to be able to have all these 13 different states forced onto a physical hard disk. You are essentially going to turn it into a brick. Now, if you want to have your code designed, developed, and tested with all of these error states, or all of these negative scenarios, or all of these edge cases, you obviously cannot try it on the physical devices. That's where we started investing into simulations to be able to try all these complex or edge cases and then be able to do that successfully. And finally, what we've also tried to do using these simulations is to be able to design and develop all possible device capabilities without worrying about whether the infrastructure is available or not. With simulations, you could pretty much try every possible thing. You could start your design developments much upfront than if you wait on the physical hardware. So that's our basic tenets why we started this device simulation. And as I said, we call it Xeon. So you'll see references to Xeon pretty much on every single slide. Uh, so as I mentioned in the previous slide also, what Xeon allows you to do is to be able to create thousands of clones of the physical devices and do it at a fraction of a cost. You could take possibly a Dell PowerEdge R940 server, and then just have one in your labs. You could take that and then be able to record it, and then create thousands of clones of the same server, and that everything in minutes. Okay, so yeah, what it allows to do is be able to record these devices, and then be able to create as many nodes or simulated nodes that you'd want. What we also tried doing is support multiple protocols. These are device management protocols: Redfish, WSWAN, WMI, SNMP, SSH. So now let's look at each and every protocol, how we've been able to cater to each and every protocol, and have been able to create simulate devices for these protocols. To begin with, WSWAN. So if you know, WSWAN is a protocol which is based on SOAP API requests, and it uses XML as a data format. Also, it's a protocol which talks to your physical devices over the out-of-band network or the iDirect network or the iLOS network in case of HP. Now, if you look at this diagram, what it tries to tell you is that whenever you have any management client, be it your management software, be it your management client, whenever it tries to talk to your physical devices, what we have is that whenever the data is flowing over the management network, what we try to do is capture the request that is moving. So think about it like a proxy that is sitting between your management client and your physical device. And what we try to do is capture the request that is going from your management client onto your physical device. And then when the physical device responds back, we are also trying to capture that response and then have this request and response pair stored into our database. And then for every request response that we've had captured between the management client and the physical device, we then replay it back in form of a simulated device. Similarly, for SSH, which is an in-band protocol which goes over host network, what we have done is to be able to have an SSH device simulation captured. We've used a tool known as DMI decode. So what we try doing is have the DMI decode request and response for every physical hardware component for a particular device stored within our database, so that when we get an SSH request, we transform it into the required response for the device. Thinking about SNMP, which is typically used for network devices, it could be in-band or out-of-band. What we've tried doing is be able to have an SNMP walk done on either the server, storage, or the networking devices, and be able to store that in a specific format. And then when we have it created as a simulated device, we are trying to have those specific OIDs being brought back from this SNMP and then responded the way a typical SNMP agent would respond for any SNMP queries. Similarly, for Redfish, so Redfish has become very popular these days. There's also some work happening around trying to extend Redfish as a swordfish for storage devices. So it uses REST APIs with the data format being JSON. So what we've been able to do for Redfish-based simulations is to be able to have the REST requests and the REST responses captured and then stored those request response pairs for every resource, for every link or sublink within a particular physical hardware, be it server or storage, and then be able to have those played back whenever there is a specific request that is coming to those simulated devices. It does seem to be very easy, and I'll show you with this workflow. So this is a simple workflow that we have. What we've tried doing is be able to abstract a lot of details from the users so that the users don't have to understand the nitty-gritties of how do you create a recording, how do you then deploy those recordings as simulated nodes. We've tried to provide REST APIs so that the users can use the REST APIs straight away from their development or the test environment so that they could create the physical device that they want. We've also provided GUI interface so that if, let's assume, some users are not comfortable with the REST APIs, they could use the GUI to be able to record or deploy simulations using the GUI. So what you can see here in this particular workflow is that you have a management session or a client, you have a physical device, and then you have the Xeon recording engine that is sitting in between those two, very similar like to a man in the middle or a proxy agent that is sitting between the two. whenever there is a Xeon user who's making a recording request, what happens is it starts capturing the request that is going from the management client onto the physical device, and then it uh, is stored in the Xeon database. Okay. Now, the Xeon recording engine forwards that request to the physical device, and once the physical device responds back, it is also storing the response in the Xeon database and then forwarding it back to the management client. In doing so, what is happening is the Xeon recording engine is able to capture the request and response pair, map it together, and store it in the Xeon database. Once you have all the requests and responses been captured, what happens essentially is that the uh, Xeon database moves that particular device recording onto what we call as Xeon Marketplace. Let's assume somebody wants a particular device recording and that's already available in the marketplace, they can readily go and start using it rather than recording those devices. What we're trying to build is a um, good repository of simulated devices which are available in your marketplace so that the users can leverage that rather than trying to find a physical device and then recording it. So the user gets a email notification once the recording is complete. Uh, so that's how recording workflow is. Similar to that, now let's assume that there's a deployment request. For that deployment request, what we've tried to create is some search functionalities within our marketplace, which is quite intuitive, text-based searching on different criteria so that you get to know exact simulation. So let's assume you want a R720 server with 2 Broadcom NICs. You can search that and be able to get that. So that's how powerful we've made this search also. So once you've searched and you've been able to find your particular device simulation, uh, we've also introduced something known as lease management. And this is something that we introduced looking at the increase in demands that we are getting for a simulator solution where people wanted to use it for scale stress kind of scenarios where they wanted these device simulations in thousands. So what we've done is created lease for um, few specific days and then also be able to create how many nodes we could assign. So what we do is get the lease details from the lease management engine, and then once we've recorded and then searched through the marketplace, what we can do is start deploying those simulations. So on the fly, the Xeon deployment engine is going to use the Docker cluster that we've created to be able to deploy um, runtime multiple device simulations that the user is requested for, whatever count he's requested for, and then also be able to do runtime customization so that every simulated device uh, is shown as unique with its IP address, MAC, service tag, whichever identity is associated with those devices, those are being randomized so that every single simulated device is behaving as a unique entity on the network. And then again, in this case, also the user gets a notification saying that your deployment is complete, which means the user doesn't have to worry and keep looking at the GUI to be able to know. Also, the user gets the list of all the IP addresses on which his simulated nodes are running, so he can straight away take those and then start discovering those in his management console or management client. So that's how simple we've made, but then there's lots that's happening behind the scenes. So we've used a lot of upcoming technologies to be able to implement this. So on the client side, we've used HTML5, we're using AngularJS, we're using Charger.js to be able to have the GUI to be as intuitive as possible. On the backend, we're using Python, Java. We're storing most of our data in Postgres. And then on the infra side, most of the heavy lifting is being done by Docker and Docker Swarm, along with some Python scripts. And then we also have Fedora coming in to have it as our host OS. But this journey has not been as easy. There have been a lot of trial and errors that we've done. And this is where we come to the interesting part of how we try implementing this simulation solution. So we started around 2014. And we were trying to build a simulated solution which will be able to scale to whatever numbers we said that we wanted it in thousands, and have these simulated solutions to be quite stable, robust, and respond to the traffic that was flowing from the management clients to the simulated devices. We've tried multiple options. We've tried multiple hypervisors. We've tried different container solutions. And the primary purpose was to be able to have some basic requirements satisfied. Just to give an example, one specific requirement is that each simulated device should be available on a physical IP address, which is routable on the physical or the public network, and it should also have its own identities in terms of having its own unique MAC. So such requirements were a little tricky in order to implement with the different solutions that we've tried, and with all possible tests that we did in terms of robustness, in terms of scale, in terms of the capabilities, we found out that Docker, along with the Docker Swarm, helped us achieve simulated solutions which can scale up to 32,000 simulated nodes running simultaneously across 11 Dell servers. So these were a few high-level requirements that we had from the simulated solution. We wanted, as I just mentioned, we wanted it to have a unique MAC address or a unique public IP address endpoint. And then we wanted to have a few other things, like it should respond very similar to your physical devices and respond over the standard protocol ports, like 443 for a few of the protocols that we just mentioned in the previous slides. Also, a few other things that we wanted to do is be able to have these simulated devices talk over different protocols simultaneously. One important feature was to be able to see that we could make runtime changes to these simulated devices. Let's assume I want to change the health statuses for a few hardware components for a few simulated nodes, or I wanted to change the inventory. Those kind of changes should be possible and should be possible at scale. So those were a few things. Again, when I'm trying to have these devices discovered, I wanted to have alert storms generated so that those alerts are sent as traps to my management station. I'll be able to capture those. And these should be done at varying rates. Likewise, there are a lot of requirements very specific to these simulations, and taking all those requirements, try our best to be able to satisfy, and we've been able to satisfy most of these requirements in the solution that we have. So this is what we have on the infrastructure piece. We have 11 Dell EMC PowerEdge R930 servers, which are hosting this simulated solution. We do have 4 Broadcom 10 gig Ethernet NICs on each of these devices, which we've teamed to be able to have taken care of the bandwidth, because there's a lot of traffic flowing between the management station or the management client and these simulated devices. So we wanted to ensure that that's not a bottleneck. Also, in terms of the OS, we're using Fedora 28 and having Docker Community Edition 18.06. Also, what we've tried to do is be able to create a 2 TB partition, which is hosting most of the Docker-related files, be it the DB that we spoke about, or be it the image files, or be it every single simulated database that we have. Okay, and we've used Docker Swarm. Many people come to us asking why you're using Docker Swarm and not Kubernetes. But then I'm really happy to say that Docker Swarm was able to satisfy most of our requirements. It's pretty stable. We've been able to create 5 managers, 6 workers, taking care of all the fault tolerance, and being able to work even if there have been a few hosts going down, and we've been able to sustain with whatever managers workers we have by having the load balance between these Docker Swarm nodes. Uh, we've been able to create 4,000 containers per node, per host, and that's not because we had certain limitations. It's just that we wanted it to be a little conservative, but then we could still go beyond 4,000 per node. And we do have it's supported for 32,000 simulated nodes. Again, since we just had 32,000 public IPs, we've restricted 30,000, but it could go much beyond 32,000. A few more details about how we've tried doing it. So as I mentioned, there is a 2 TB VD that we've created, which is hosting all the Docker files, and that's being mounted onto each of the hosts, so that on the fly we pick files from those and then be able to cater to each and every simulation requirement. And these could be unique. We've tried to create and have a big subnet split between these 11 Docker hosts so that I can have specific IPs assigned to each and every container that is created on these specific nodes. A few settings with respect to Docker, which have really helped us. One is around the Docker config file, which we tweaked, and what we started doing is to be able to have all the Docker files being created by having the Docker daemon start with the root directory as /data, which we just mentioned that's the 2 TB VD that we had created. Tasks were set to max, and as I said, we had a Docker Swarm created which had 5 managers and 6 workers taking care of all the fault tolerance and load balancing. Now, one interesting aspect that I wanted to spend a little more time on is the Docker MAC VLAN network. This is something that was introduced in the recent versions of Docker, and what it helped was it essentially provided unique MAC and IP endpoints for each of those containers, and also provided a bridge so that the host is able to reach the containers. The containers are able to reach each of the containers which are created across multiple hosts, and also any traffic that is flowing from the outside was able to get into the host, and through the host it was able to get to the containers and back and forth. So every container was shown as a unique entity on the network with its unique MAC, with its unique public IP address, which meant that you would not have any latency in terms of how your management client would try to hit its request, be it Redfish, be it WSMan, be it SNMP, to every single container, and then get its response back in typically how a physical device gets. So that's one thing and I'll show you a few details when we get into the actual demo part also. Every Docker service that was created with container in that Docker service using this MAC VLAN network, which had scope over the swarm. So this picture again shows how I've been able to cater to these simulation requirements. So looking at the Xeon infrastructure orchestration, what I said is that we have a Docker Swarm cluster which had few management workers. Whenever a request for a particular deployment for a container comes, the typical files that we need is the actual database which is used for recording that particular device. So it's picked from the marketplace. We have the service created with whatever number of simulated nodes that the user has asked for, and those services are then deployed across using the MAC VLAN network on these Docker Swarm hosts. So what you see now is one of the hosts, the Docker host, and I've opened one of the terminals here. I want to show you some aspects of how this has been implemented here. So if I say Docker Network LS, what you could see is there are multiple networks created for this, but I want you to stress on this MAC VLAN network that we've created, and you could see the scope is at the swarm level. Okay, I'll show you certain details of this. And what you could see is that this is a Swarm MAC VLAN network that we've created. As I said, the scope is at the Swarm level, and this is something which is known as MAC VLAN. You could also see that the subnet details Okay, for each of those, and then what happens is uh, this is then being used to have uh, each and every container that is being created. So you can see here now that the highlighted section, you can see that there are a few containers that are listed here with their MAC addresses and IP addresses. And you could see that this is pretty much in the same range that you've seen whatever we've given, which means that now what happens is that any traffic that is flowing from the outside network gets into the host and gets into the container pretty seamlessly, and then also flows back. So all the inward outward traffic is flowing seamlessly between the external entities to your containers and back. Within the containers also, each container can talk to every other container that you have. Um, Also, if you have realized, every network has an ID. If you see this ID, please make a note of this. 57LS is what it is ending with. You can see that there are a few services created here. I'm going to show you a few details about this merge service that I have created, which is using this form network. Um, Now, when you try inspecting this particular service, you can realize, note down this network. You can see that this is now using the MAC VLAN network to be able to create every single simulation that under it using this MAC VLAN. Okay. You can even note down the network IDs for the virtual IPs. It's using this. Okay. Now, there are a few containers that I've created under this. Okay. Let's have a look at this. You can see that these are the 5 containers that I've created under the service merge one. I'll just take the first container ID here and just try to see the details of this container. So note down that this container has got an IP 100.128.110. If you try to look at this simulation that we've created, where it is hosting both Redfish and WSMan. Okay, so what we can do now is be able to look at this particular simulation. So let's try to make a Redfish call. So this is the IP 100.128.110. If I make a Redfish call, you can see all the Redfish resources that are being listed out here, and you could drill down to each and every resource that you have here to be able to query for all the Redfish communication that is possible using this. We can also look at it how the actual WSMan calls also refer to it. Now, note down the service tag. You could see that this is randomly generated. The MAC addresses are randomly generated, which means that every simulated device is going to be unique. Let's try to make a WSMan call. So this is a WSMan call which is being made on DSIM system view. If you could note down, this is responding to the WSMan calls, and it's responding in typical XML format. And since this uses XML as a output format, and this is a SOAP based protocol. Also, something to note down as the service tag. If you note down for this also, you'll be able to see that the service tag for the Redfish and the WSMan is matching. These devices are going to respond like how a physical device does respond over the protocols that you've recorded for, which means you get not just one single protocol, you get Redfish, WSMan, SNMP, and also what we are trying to provide is be able to not just have it recorded over a particular protocol, but also respond for traps. So you could actually have a device recorded over Redfish. You could have it discovered using Redfish, and then you could send traps for that particular device using SNMP with whatever frequency or rate that you want, and those traps are going to be coming and hitting your trap destinations or your management client using SNMP. So that's what um, we've tried to do as part of this. Now, one interesting aspect is how do we really try to do this? As I mentioned, um, one aspect that we've tried doing is to be able to take each and every simulated device as a DB and then store it in a proprietary form. Whenever a user is requesting for a particular simulated device, what we do is try to have that particular database tagged on runtime to that particular container, and then we have the web services created which actually listen to each of the requests, try to find what is the map for that particular request, and then send the required response from the database that we have. Whenever we get a particular deployment request on the fly, respective simulated DB is picked, we have either Redfish or WSMan code being tagged along and on the fly with the required DB, so that it starts responding over to those specific protocols. So now let's jump back to our slide deck. I'm going back to the previous slide which I had shared before we went to the demo. Now you can look at the slide and see how we've tried to put all the jigsaws, and now with we seeing how the MAC VLAN network is being used, how the containers are being spawned, how the database is being picked for a particular simulation from the marketplace, how the images are used to create the particular containers on the fly for whatever count the user wants. We've tried to add a lot many capabilities on top of the plain vanilla simulations that we were trying to create using the Docker Swarm as a backend. We've tried to have REST interfaces added so that you could have the devices being recorded or deployed from be it your development environment or your test environment, so that the simulations are available for you to do your dev or your UT or your test on those devices, which are created in minutes. Similarly, once you're done with using those, you could just destroy it from your code. We've tried to have these API capabilities tried across multiple customer demos, automation. We've tried it for orchestration, CI/CD environments also. And also what we've introduced is by looking at user patterns, how they're using it, we've tried to have leasing policies introduced where dev and test, as I said, they can use the simulated nodes at their will. They don't have to actually go and create leases. But then if it is being used for perf and scalability kind of requirements where they're going to be used for extended period of time and the count of simulated nodes are going to be on the highest side, they can actually go and lease specific nodes for specific duration, so that we have proper fair use of the entire Xeon infrastructure that we put together for the simulations. And as I said, we also have the self-service GUI portal using which the users can actually create the leases, they can do the recordings, they can do the deployments. And last but not the least, the key differentiator that we've been able to bring is to be able to have customizations created. And one aspect of that is being able to take devices which have just sparse hardware. I'll give you certain examples. Let's assume you have a storage array which has got just a few disks in that, and you want to actually create a group of storage arrays with every storage array populated to the max. We've been able to create that because once you understand the structure of how the overall device structure is represented in either of these formats, be it JSON, be it XML, we can actually tweak and extrapolate a given physical device and be able to create as many extrapolations of the existing devices. We've been able to do max configs for storage boxes with just a few storage devices with very limited hard drives. We've been able to cater to requirements where we had modular chassis systems which had just a few sleds, and then we were able to create a max configs for chassis with all the chassis blades being populated. We've been able to cater to a lot more requirements in terms of having not just simulations created for physical devices like over WSMan, Redfish, or SNMP. We've also been able to cater to requirements where users wanted to have ESXi based host simulations created and map those to the physical devices. So we've been able to cater to those kind of requirements. And also, again, based on our understanding of how these device data are being structured. So the key tenets that we've been able to meet using these simulated solutions is to be able to have turnkey recording and deployment done along with the API support. We've been able to have this created over a vast scale. At the same time, have this done very simply using just single click deployments for thousands of nodes using Docker containers. And I would say Docker Swarm has been of great help there. Also, we've been able to put together different protocols in one particular container and be able to support devices which are responding to different protocols as the management client is expecting them to do. We've also been able to auto-learn and adapt. I spoke about the customizations that we've been able to do, but at the same time, we've also been able to look at how a physical device behaves, what is the typical response time from a physical device, and be able to replicate that same exact behavior between the management client and the simulated device. We've also been able to put WAN simulators to be able to cater to the typical network hops that happen within data centers. So those kind of environments we've also been able to cater to. Certain things were surprising. Typically, when somebody speaks about containers, they talk about something which runs for a few minutes and then it is destroyed. But then we've been able to have 15,000 simulations running continuously for 9 months, responding to management traffic over different protocols every single minute, and still be able to respond and run for these 9 months. And while we were doing all of this, we would also be able to have a stable bring up and tear downs for the other simulated requirements that we had from few other programs where we were able to cater those scale bring up and tear downs while these 15,000 simulations were still running issueless for 9 months, and not just running, but then responding to thousands of queries that were coming from the management clients every single minute. Also, few success stories. Again, good amount of credit goes to how we've used containers for this simulation solution. We've been able to have 7x more device simulations hosted on every single host. And as I said, 4,000 is just a conservative number that we've tried to go up to. It can go much beyond that. Also, we've been able to have the creation time of these device simulations reduced to a large extent. We've been able to do a lot of work around simulations using different protocols, using the technologies, the latest ones, not just for the backend, which is Docker Swarm containers, but then also on the front end side using REST APIs, being able to use HTML5 and AngularJS. So the primary intent of having this shared with you was to see if there are any other teams who would want to, or any other companies who would want to look at this and be able to leverage some efforts that we've already done around trying to have these device simulations being done. I'm free to take any questions, any feedback. But then, yeah, if we are not able to catch up over here, feel free to send out an email at zion@dell.com, and we will surely try to see what best we could do to help you with your simulation journey. Thank you so much for your time.